Welcome to another Cut Content series. I've seen a lot of people complaining that I used an AI voice on my Spanish channel instead of my original voice, but like I said, guys, these types of videos perform better the sooner I get them out, and it's not like just using an AI for the voice makes everything else lose its value. Anyway, I later mentioned on my stream the next day that the reason I used AI was to save myself the 2 to 3 extra hours of editing I have to do when recording with my real voice. But since my community loves me so much, they donated $40 that day, just so the next video would feature my voice. Not because they want the video to be higher quality, but because they want to see me suffer editing for 4 more hours while the competition drops their video first. If this video came out late, it's the fault of those dumbasses who donated to make me use my voice. But a quick shout out to the new channel members. A shout out to Christian, Elgrown, and Sunday World. Thanks for the support. Usually, I'd say a bit more, but today we need to speed things up. Over on my English community side, I've got a Kakashi fan as a new member who I'd like to thank, and there was a guy who supported me with the EX1 goal, someone named Nupu, so thank you very much. Now then, let's get started. Welcome to Everything Skipped in Episode 2 of Season 4. Today's episode continues adapting Volume 21. So far, the anime has already adapted the crossed-out parts. Not in their entirety, of course, but at least the main gist of each part. Starting today, I'll use this reference at the beginning of every video so we have an idea of what has already been adapted and what's left to adapt. As for the first scene, the one where they talk before leaving, it largely kept the original dialogue. And even though they left out moments like Meili acting spoiled and saying Beatrice was too close to Subaru, or the moment right before setting off where Biko and Emilia each grab one of Subaru's hands, well, putting that aside, nothing major was skipped. This is also where Julius talks a bit more about how his bond with his spirits has been severed and how, in a way, he's been nerfed. In fact, the novel brings this up here because Roswaal had asked him to be the one to deal with Ram's ailment. But since his link with his spirits was cut, Roswaal ends up asking Bayako and Emilia, as we saw in the anime. Unfortunately, the other part that I consider a shame to have been skipped is that, at the exact same moment Roswaal asks them to take care of Ram's physical condition, Subaru has an interesting reflection about it. A reflection that I'd rather you hear from the narration and not from me. Remember, this happens right after Roswaal asks them to look after Ram.
Subaru expressed his sheer astonishment at the sincerity of the request, even going so far as to ask if Roswaal was feeling alright after acting so genuinely. Faced with that irreverent remark, Roswaal chose not to react in his usual manner, responding instead with a solemnity that left Subaru speechless. The Margrave admitted that he found the situation rather admirable, pointing out that it was the very first time Ram had explicitly expressed her desire to leave his side. Roswaal went on to explain with conviction that he was certain Ram could feel the weight of what had happened despite having no memory of it. He further confessed that he had found it quite terrifying to watch her rebel against him while carrying such a heavy emotional burden. Subaru, for his part, accepted the commitment, assuring him that he would take his words to heart. At that moment, he sensed that something deep within Roswaal's heart had shifted because of Ram's deliberate decision. Despite everything that had gone down during the Sanctuary incident a year ago, she still maintained her devotion to him. Subaru reflected on how even someone like Roswaal might have been moved by the young woman's unwavering dedication, even though he always prioritized his ultimate desire above all else. Ultimately, to Subaru, the fact that Roswaal revealed himself to be a human being incapable of handling overwhelming emotions was without a doubt far better than dealing with an incomprehensible monster.
Honestly, I like how the author keeps referencing and working on the Roswaal and Ram subplot. That subplot where the pink-haired maid managed to make him doubt and waver in his supposedly unalterable feelings for Echidna. Unfortunately, the author wouldn't touch this subplot again until the Empire Saga, where Ram meets a woman from Roswaal's past and an interesting chat takes place. But that's a story for later, for when the 5th season comes out in 5 years. Before moving on to the next part, another huge detail that was skipped, and even though it hurts, I understand why it was necessary to cut it, is the mention of the city of Costl. It's a very important city because, if I had to put it in historical terms, Costl would be the Great Britain of the Industrial Revolution, but in the world of ReZero. If you don't know world history, basically Great Britain was the first country to industrialize, hence the comparison of Costl with that nation. I'd love to talk to you in depth about the side novels that detail how Costl industrialized, but those are stories I simply can't cover in short formats because they are very long novels. Really interesting things happened there, like when Clint and Garfield had to team up to rescue Frederica, who was kidnapped by an unknown villain that will probably show up soon in the main story. Anyway, getting back on track, it's due to this precedent we have of Costl being a modern city that it's said that during the year that passed between the second and third season, Subaru went to build Rem's wheelchair there thanks to the local artisans and his original knowledge from Japan. Well, this was skipped because, unfortunately, the Costl subplot hasn't been touched on in the anime, and since that subplot was never mentioned, there's no reason to reference it now. But before moving to the next scene, there are two side stories that happen at this moment but we didn't get to see. The first one happens the night before our protagonists start their journey, and it stars Beatrice. Did you know that Petra and Beatrice spent a night together after returning from Pristella? This should have been referenced or shown briefly in episode 1 of Re:Zero Season 4, but it didn't happen. After the battle in the water city of Pristella, Beatrice and the others returned to the mansion for a brief breather before leaving for the watchtower. That night, Petra had invited the little spirit to a sleepover in her room. Even though Betty slept next to Subaru every night, every now and then she would sleep with Petra or Amelia. After setting up a table with tea and sweets, Petra asked her with an unusually serious tone to tell her absolutely everything that had happened in Pristella. Beatrice, sensing that Amelia had sugar-coated the most dangerous details in her letter so as not to cause a panic, decided it was best to tell the harsh truth. She knew from her vast experience that hiding the suffering of loved ones only created a deeper abyss of pain in the long run. Thus, she meticulously recounted every one of Subaru's sacrifices. How much he had overexerted himself to the point of breaking his own limits, and the severity of the injuries Garfield and Otto had suffered. Petra listened, shifting from terror to a silent admiration, before finally frowning and asking what had happened to Beatrice herself during all that chaos. Little Bika was left speechless by the question. She thought Petra was scolding her for not having prevented the pain and hardships her contractor suffered. However, Petra exploded with indignation, but not because of Beatrice's supposed uselessness. The little girl furiously called her out, saying she wasn't mad about what Beatrice was just thinking, but rather about how much Subaru had forced her to exhaust her mana to the point of collapsing, making her face a Sin Archbishop alongside Otto in the process. Petra accused her of having zero self-preservation instincts and of dangerously catching her contractor's suicidal habits. With visible concern, she demanded that she sleep by her side that night to make sure she was safe. Betty just complained, telling her not to think she could give her orders just because she grew a little in the month she didn't see her. But even so, she agreed to share the bed with her, thereby sealing an unspoken promise of mutual care. In the middle of the night, Beatrice woke up feeling thirsty. Upon going down to the kitchen, she ran into Frederica, who was preparing a sweet strawberry tea that Subaru had taught her how to make. While they shared the drink, Frederica confessed that imagining Garfield and Otto's injuries made her understand the hell that Subaru and Amelia must have gone through. With an honest look that reminded her of her old friend Ryuzu, she begged Beatrice to take care of them on the journey to the watchtower. Nevertheless, Frederica's final request was the one that shocked the spirit the most. She begged her to take care of herself as well. Beatrice choked on her tea, blushing at receiving genuine concern for a second time in one night. Frederica let out a little laugh while Beatrice sighed sweetly, realizing how warm and protective the people of that mansion were, valuing her as part of their family, surely because of Petra and Frederica's requests. After our protagonists head toward the watchtower, in the anime they arrive instantly, but in reality several days of travel went by. During those days, the gang socialized with each other, and while the author didn't tell us everything that was discussed, he did tell us a bit in the main novel and the side novel. Let's start with the main novel first. It's said that Julius and Subaru were talking, and while this is shown in the anime, it doesn't show everything. In the cut content, it narrates how they start talking because Julius sees Subaru yawning, and that's not proper for knights like them. Because of this, he kind of scolds him, but Subaru tells him to get off his back, saying that yawning or relaxing every now and then is fine. You know, it's the typical friendly banter they have regarding their differences, but deep down they appreciate each other. While the anime used this moment just to tell us that Julius's power has been depleted by losing his bond with the spirits, in the novel they go a bit further. They tell us how Subaru foolishly suggests he should ask other spirits for help to regain some of his power. But Julius tells him he can't just sever those ties with the beings who have helped him up to this point. Subaru agrees with him, thinking that if he lost his bond with Beatrice, he wouldn't try to sever the connection just because of a setback. They also talk about how the road has been peaceful so far, and Julius tells him that's because the kingdom's paths are much quieter compared to Gusteco and Wallachia. He says that in Gusteco, due to the region's eternal snow, it's hard to keep the roads threat-free, whereas in Wallachia, due to the wide variety of customs resulting from its many races, conflicts are more frequent. Then comes my favorite part. They talk about the past, and there it's revealed that Julius has known Reinhardt for over 10 years. Hearing him talk a bit about the night made Subaru realize how Reinhardt had been carrying that burden for a long time, and at that point, he confesses to Julius how he also struggled with something similar in the past. Julius listens to him and, by way of comfort, tells him it must have certainly been hard for him. Subaru just felt a bit conflicted that it was Julius of all people cheering him up. Honestly, I'd really hate for this Reinhardt subplot to be erased, since by the end of the 4th season, this will carry a lot of weight in Julius's future. Even the present-day Julius in the light novel is going through an interesting arc as a result of these reflections that the anime is unfortunately skipping. This Reinhardt segment ends when Subaru remembers that the knight was currently escorting Sirius to the capital and wonders how he's doing. But I already summarized that side novel, and I'll share it with you now. While Subaru is busy dying left and right thanks to Season 4, things aren't exactly easy for Felt. After all, she's guarding a person who poses a threat to the entire nation, Sirius. This is revealed in a novel that is not only little known, but that the author actually had to rewrite 5 years after publishing it. And you're in luck, because the version I'm about to tell you is the updated one. The story kicks off by narrating how the carriage carrying the candidate Reinhardt and Sirius is ambushed by some bandits. The looters had no idea they were messing with the worst possible target, but seeing a lone carriage traveling by itself, they figured it would be an easy heist. Felt asked her driver not to go overboard with the force. That driver was none other than Reinhardt, who, with his usual calmness, introduced himself to the terrified assailants before neutralizing them with a single devastating blow. While this was going down, Felt sighed over this being the 6th attack they'd suffered. She thinks it's extremely suspicious that not only have they been attacked multiple times by bandits, but the bridge connecting their routes was also wiped out by a flash flood. And as if that weren't enough, several maybeasts that aren't even native to the area kept attacking the carriage. Then a voice interrupted her. It was Sirius, who was immobilized with bandages and chains. With her twisted tone, the monster told Felt that her gloomy expression was ruining how adorable she looked. Felt demanded she stop calling her adorable, since she hated those kinds of compliments. Sirius, cackling and rattling her restraints, interpreted the rejection as a sign that Felt actually wanted to get along with her. The candidate complained about volunteering to escort such a freak to the capital, to which Sirius sarcastically suggested that she just hand the job over to someone else then. Felt shot down the idea while thinking to herself that the best way to handle this job was with the smallest amount of people possible, and specifically people who wouldn't be affected by the Archbishop's power. Later, Felt brought up the constant attacks they'd been suffering. Sirius looked down with a fake melancholy and claimed it happened because she is a woman who attracts misfortune. She even mentions that her hometown was destroyed in a witch hunt and she was the only survivor. The Archbishop finished by saying that everything she did was because of the misery the world had brought upon her, justifying herself by saying it was inevitable. Sick and tired of listening to her wallow in her own victim complex, Felt told her to shut up. She made it crystal clear that she had zero sympathy for her excuses, bringing up the example of a certain half-elf girl who, despite being in the exact same circumstances, doesn't use her misfortunes as an excuse when dealing with others. Felt concluded that Sirius was nothing more than a crazy coward using her weakness as a shield. It's said that at the mere mention of the half-elf, Sirius gets consumed by such a deep, profound hatred that she starts insulting the girl in a way that actually scares Felt. But right at that moment, Reinhardt arrived. I'd letting her know he had already taken care of the situation. Felt was surprised when she realized just how relieved she felt seeing her knight come back, and while they were figuring out what to do with the bandits, Sirius starts singing, much to Felt's annoyance. Though at the very least, she preferred having that lunatic sing rather than try to make conversation. Unfortunately, the journey would only continue to be a hassle because they still had 10 more days to go. But that's a story you don't know yet. After talking about Reinhardt, Subaru foolishly brings up the topic of Joshua to try and make a joke, but he chooses his words poorly and ends up saddening Julius. It's said they didn't speak again that day, and it wasn't until 3 days later that they finally arrived in the city of Merula, the closest city to the watchtower. There's another side story that happens a few days before they arrive in this city, so I'll play it now. I'll warn you it's no big deal, but it is a nice character interaction moment in this part of the story. Did you know that Subaru once felt jealous when he saw Julius dancing with Emilia? This appeared in a novel set at the beginning of what would be Season 4. The anime will likely skip it, but I won't. By the way, consider this your spoiler warning. Following the fierce battle in the city of Pristella, Natsuki Subaru and his group set out on the arduous journey toward the sand dunes in search of the sage. However, the trip was awkward due to the tense interaction between Anastasia and Julius. Remember that since Julius had been forgotten by everyone, Anastasia had no memory of him. Furthermore, the Anastasia present at that time wasn't the usual Anna, but the artificial spirit known as Echidna. Only Subaru and Beatrice knew the truth, which is why Subaru was the only one capable of detecting the tension between Julius and the candidate. He feared that Anastasia's true identity would be exposed, complicating the group's dynamics. Feeling stifled by Julius's overwhelming devotion, Anastasia signaled Subaru for help. Sensing the urgency, Subaru orchestrated a distraction by sending Amelia to tend to the confused knight. He told Amelia that Julius's face looked tense, so he asked her to wipe that stiff expression off his face. This way, he managed to get some alone time with the spirit. Echidna confessed that she found Julius's devotion unbearable, lacking precise memories of the original relationship between the merchant and her knight. She feared any slip-up would give away her true identity. She begged Subaru to intervene and help establish some much-needed distance. Though frustrated by having to cover for someone who shares the name of the witch he loathes, the young man agreed. However, when he went looking for Amelia, he found her holding Julius's hands as if they were about to dance. It turns out Amelia took the order to remove his stiff expression, quite literally, and was about to stroke his face to soothe him, when in reality, she was only supposed to talk to him and listen to his troubles. After a small jealous fit and once alone with the forgotten knight, Subaru tactfully suggested that his excessive closeness to Anastasia felt unnatural. Julius, with palpable sadness, admitted he was aware of his lady's discomfort. He explained that even if the world had forgotten the bonds forged in the past, he still vividly remembered his loyalty and the friendships that defined his life. He questioned whether acting based on memories only he possessed was an act of pure selfishness or a greed that only caused distress. Subaru was on the verge of telling him that if he already knew, he should stop acting that way. But looking at the solitary battle of that man erased from history, he couldn't bring himself to be cruel. Firmly, he assured him that clinging to his feelings was not a sin, and that he shouldn't accept an unfair loss just because the rest of the world couldn't understand it. Moved, Julius thanked him for the gesture and mentioned that he had started recording his experiences in a journal since the events in Pristella, adding that Subaru's name appeared frequently in his notes. Seeing the knight at peace, Subaru decided that, for the time being, he'd let Echidna suffer a bit longer under Julius's devotion. But this touching moment of friendship would be shattered later on, when the knight discovers that Subaru always... Only after this would the tavern scene take place. There, they kept the important detail that the gang must follow the dove in case they get disoriented and don't know how to reach the watchtower. In the source material itself, they actually talk about more things, like making it clear that when sand time happens, which is when the sand blows with greater force, that's when you should rest, kind of like in Pokemon battles when they summon a sandstorm. But since Subaru was still in the city and it was somewhat safe, he decided to go out and experiment, and that's how he and Amelia ended up at the tavern. Aside from what the tavern keeper told the protagonists about the danger and the doves, the novel also mentions the miasma present in the area. It makes it clear that a person is constantly absorbing mana from their surroundings. But miasma, which is poisoned mana, is abundant at the watchtower, so being exposed to it for a long time could be fatal to the mind and body. After that, it's made clear that the reason the tavern keeper gave them the information about the dove is because Subaru and Amelia were very generous with the tip they left. Curiously enough, this wouldn't be the last time the tavern keeper makes an appearance. He'll also show up later on, but that's a story for the eventual 6th season of ReZero. Later, when the protagonists head deep into the desert, there were actually more things skipped. Things like a revelation about Beatrice's breed. It's said she is a descendant of the dragon Diana, the first dragon to master air, land, and sea. No matter the environment, Beatrice will perform well. It's also said that this is the moment the gang gets Joseph, the dragon that will accompany them on the journey to the watchtower. In the anime, they made it seem like they left with Joseph from the very start, but in reality, they came with a different dragon. This different dragon brought them from Pristella, but since the anime is cutting a lot of stuff, they also cut this dragon's existence. In the novel, they leave this dragon waiting in Mirala while they receive Joseph in exchange. It's also mentioned that Julius would have liked to bring Shaknar, the personal dragon he uses as transport, and that we saw in the first season, but because of gluttony, he can no longer get near his old friend because the dragon forgot him. Lastly, it's said that Beatrice was somewhat upset with Subaru because he didn't go to ask for her help when the Pristella events went down. The female dragon felt ashamed for not having helped her owner. They never say it in the anime, but Beatrice was in a stable in Pristella throughout all of Arc 5. Then, an interesting scene happens that shows another vulnerable side of Ram. It's said that no matter how hard Amelia and Byakko tried to supply the maid with mana, it wasn't enough, and Ram found herself weaker than usual. Since Subaru and Amelia showed concern for her, Ram just spoke up and pleaded with them not to leave her behind, saying she can still make the trip there. Subaru and Amelia assure her they weren't thinking that, and so they set off toward their destination. Along the way, there's a little world building regarding ReZero's lore. It's said that the reason there is no vegetation in the Watchtower's desert is due to the miasma, and Subaru states his surprise, noting that the place wasn't as blazing hot as he thought. Basically, walking in the Watchtower is like walking in a heatless desert if we were to put it in real-world terms. though it's revealed that in the world of Lugunica, there are the Red Dunes of Giral, a place where the sand is made of small magic stones that explode all year round. Then the conversation with Mei Li plays out almost exactly the same. I think the only thing they skipped was a comment from her complaining that Subaru isn't by her side for the trip. Subaru tells her she has Julius to keep her company, but she says she prefers him. After that, the anime reveals that Betty already knows Anastasia's secret. It seems that at some point off-screen Subaru told her in this canon, the anime canon. After Mei Li's creature disappeared from that scene, Subaru thought to himself that it'd be fine if the journey stayed this boring, basically saying it because he doesn't want any more surprises of that kind. Now we reach the scene of the gang's first night in the Watchtower Dunes, and here I feel like the anime made the protagonists look like idiots. You see, that first night you see in the anime also happens in the novel, but in the novel, that night is long and they talk about everything that happened that day. The anime chose to stretch out all the conversations from that night across the following days. It's because in the novel they discuss everything on the first night that the characters agree that despite moving forward, the tower isn't getting any closer. And while that's where Anastasia starts explaining why this is happening and why they haven't made progress. Though something that would have been great if they added is how, while the whole group wasn't in the best of spirits due to the heavy atmosphere of the miasma, it's said that Emilia mentioned she was feeling better than ever. For some reason, it seems the miasma actually strengthens Emilia, which is suspicious because it feeds into the stereotypes of her being a witch. That same night is also when they tell Ram about Anastasia's plan to use her to find the true path, whereas in the anime they don't tell her until days later. See why I say the anime characters looked like idiots compared to the novel counterparts? Anyway, in fact, while in the anime it seems like Ram was able to find the path on the first day, the novel narrates that it took her 3 days to get that result, and she worked extremely hard trying to use the local mabeasts. Something that would have been very, very cool for the anime to keep is the odd feeling Subaru gets when seeing the dove. He says he finds it really weird that a simple bird is in a place that affects all living beings, yet it seems completely unaffected. I highly recommend you pay close attention to this subplot because Subaru is actually right to be suspicious. But in this very episode, Subaru concludes that the Watchtower deserts are no place for a bird to be. And in fact, I'll put the novel excerpt that points out this irregularity right now so you can hear it and draw your own conclusions.
The instruction to follow the bird in the sky lacked any real evidence, and in a sense, represented an absolutely absurd decision. Subaru reflected that, had he seen the bird during his first day in the dunes, he never would have considered following it based solely on the bartender's words. However, after several days of fruitless efforts, he had reached a logical conclusion. He figured that, setting aside the presence of the mabeasts, it was physically impossible for a conventional bird to soar through those skies. There were plenty of reasons for such skepticism, ranging from the lack of food and water to the constant threat of predators and the corrosive effect of the miasma on any living creature. Faced with the hostility of that environment, Subaru questioned why a bird would spread its wings in such a lethal setting. Was she reaching the firm suspicion that no matter how you looked at it, that animal couldn't be normal and must be hiding some kind of trick? That distrust, forged after days of traversing the hellish landscape of Augria, found its validation through Ram's clairvoyance. She confirmed that the bird was heading straight ahead without losing sight of the tower for a single moment, admitting that Barusu's suspicion had been spot on and that, for once, his twisted and distrustful personality had paid off. Although Subaru felt annoyed by the scathing way in which she expressed her agreement, the unusual nature of the discovery was undeniable. While it wasn't strange for migratory birds to fly for days on end, the fact that they maintained such a fixed and continuous focus on a single place was extraordinary. Even so, the challenge of chasing a creature that flew without rest presented itself as an exhausting task for those who, lacking wings, were condemned to follow it from the ground.
Interestingly enough, the novel complements this information about the doves with the fact that they only started appearing a year ago. And what happened a year ago? Well, it seems to coincide with Subaru's arrival in this world. Anyway, the gang then enters the right path and reaches the flower field, which, I won't deny, disappointed me quite a bit because after reading the novel, I had pictured it being way more epic. You see, the bear part is much more imposing in the novel. It's stated there that the bears don't usually roam in that area, which puzzles Mei Li, who was already familiar with them. This kind of sparked a certain theory that I covered in a video I made about Arc 6, which I invite you to watch if you don't mind spoilers. Then Mei Li stresses that mabeasts are most dangerous right after waking up, and says that while she could control 100 of them, it wouldn't be much use because she estimates there are over 1,000 in that place. But now, if we look at the anime, you barely see a few dozen, being generous. Sure, I know the anime version might excuse it by saying the dragon's roar didn't wake them all up, but reading how the protagonists deal with the beasts in the novel was way more epic. Just to give you an idea, they ended up so surrounded that in order to turn the tide, Mei Li had to bring in 6 sandworms to finally turn the battle around. But watching the chase in the anime gives off the vibe that if they just stopped for a minute, they could beat the bear Mei beasts and then move on without a hitch. Some lore that was lost in this part is that it's mentioned the bears look more like corpses controlled by the flower growing on their backs, and they stank so bad that Subaru says he'd rather be back in Sandtime. Another thing the anime toned down, losing the chance to make it more impactful, is that when Subaru gets decapitated, it's said that all his companions were decapitated at the exact same time. Later, in the second loop, things played out almost exactly like in the anime. The only thing omitted was how Subaru actually died, and I imagine the anime opted to cut it because they wanted the pacing of this part to be fast. Now I'll play how Subaru truly died in the second loop.
Propping himself up on his arms, as if trying to sit up in bed, Subaru scanned his surroundings until his eyes fell upon a devastating sight. Beatrice's imposing body lay beside him, completely motionless, with a gruesome wound on her side that gave off the pungent stench of burnt flesh and blood. Remembering the recent events, he realized with bitter clarity that the loyal beast had thrown herself in the line of fire to protect him. In that moment of realization, Beatrice's scream, calling out his name, pierced the air. Turning around, he saw her running towards him from a short distance away, her face contorted in an expression of profound pain and sorrow. Following the gaze of her blue eyes, Subaru looked down at his own body and discovered that just like Beatrice, a clean hole had been blown straight through the right side of his stomach. The sheer visual shock of the wound caused blood to well up in his throat, while his vision began to blur and tilt. He collapsed, entirely unable to resist, feeling the strength drain from his limbs as his consciousness began to fade away. In the midst of that creeping darkness, he felt someone fall to their knees beside him. Beatrice began shaking him by the shoulder, screaming his name over and over, desperately begging him not to die and pleading with him through her tears and sobs not to leave her all alone. Subaru heard her wailing, and although he wanted to reach out and comfort her, his body no longer obeyed him. Deep down, he thought that such a pretty face shouldn't be covered in tears, feeling an overwhelming urge to make her stop crying. She kept sobbing as she clung to him in a desperate embrace, trying with all her might to hold up Subaru's limp body, which was far too heavy for her small arms. Seeing the tears streaming down the little girl's cheeks, he desperately searched for any part of his being that could still move to wipe them away, but nothing responded. Faced with the total paralysis of his muscles, he resorted to something beyond his physical form. It was then that a hidden hand, a shadowy presence that only he could perceive, materialized to wipe the tears from Beatrice's cheek. The moment the black finger made contact with her teardrop, she looked at him as if she had noticed something unusual. Subaru tried to give her a reassuring smile, but he didn't even have the energy left to curve his lips. Just as she tried to form a few words, a beam of white light traveling from the distance shattered the moment. A new blast tore straight through Subaru's chest. Slowly looking down, he realized that the beam had first pierced the back of the little girl clinging to him, completely blowing through her, before continuing its destructive path right through his own chest. With one final gasp, the little girl's body suddenly shattered into particles of light, vanishing before his very eyes as if she had never even existed. Deprived of Beatrice's support, Subaru slumped heavily to the ground, completely incapacitated and stripped of any reason to keep fighting. The overwhelming white beam had reduced his insides to nothing, and as his life faded away, the horde of Costl bears closed in, licking their chops. His breathing stopped and his eyes lost focus, leaving it a mystery whether his life flickered out before the fangs and claws began to tear apart what was left of him. His brain shut down, entirely losing the ability to process reality, though in his final fleeting breath, he seemed to catch a glimpse of another white flash erupting on the horizon.
In the third loop, the only thing cut were a few scenes where Subaru thanked Emilia and Beatrice for what they did for him in the previous loops. They also considered heading back to the sand path just to see if they'd spawn in a more easily accessible location. But in the end, they decided they'd quietly pass through the flower meadow, and if a bear Mei beast woke up, Mei Li would handle putting it back to sleep. But they'd start getting attacked like we saw in the anime, and everyone ends up falling below. That's all for now. Let's look at the author's comments. As you should know by now, the author usually posts tweets when the anime airs. These tweets supplement the info and sometimes even add extra lore. I won't put all the tweets because some are really basic, but I included the ones I think are the most interesting. Since the opening played in this episode, the author gave his opinion on it and said that the part with the multiple dying Subarus was very difficult for the animators to make. He also comments that while Julius was nerfed after the battle with Gluttony, he makes it clear that it's a nerf that can be undone at any moment, as he says the spirits still haven't decided whether they should lend him their strength or not. Lastly, he made a comment about the lore that not even I knew. He said that while Subaru wears a mask during sand time, Beatrice doesn't need one because she's a spirit, which is why she isn't wearing one in this frame. Like I said, there are more tweets, but believe me, the rest are no big deal and we can easily skip them. Now let's move on to the final part for today. Regarding the break time, I was surprised by the adaptation of today's side story. I don't want to talk too much about this because I covered this cut content in my Season 3 videos. Basically, this chat between Petra and Mei Li takes place during the time frame of the 3rd season. And it's a side novel where Petra voices her thoughts about everyone in the mansion. She doesn't speak negatively, she just vents about the peculiar way each faction member relates to others. At the same time, the story serves to introduce Petra's subplot regarding the journey she'll take alongside Roswaal to unify the support of the cities in Roswaal's territory for Amelia. I recommend giving it a read if you enjoy the calm moments. But that'll be all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully the shorts I insert don't bother you too much. But I ask you to remember that the people who watch my long videos don't necessarily watch my shorts, and vice versa. But that's all for now. See ya!